Welcome back to Real Time Workflows. Today, I'm going to show you two cuts of previs for my film Prassenberg Ridge, and I'll show you picture in picture of the final film and how the previs fed the final film and how it evolved over time. It's the first time I've shown this to anybody outside of a very small group of friends while I was making the film. So let's get into it. Let's take a look at what the previs looked like for the very first version. So we saw this intro in the last video. So some of the things that are wrong and why this iterated, that's a mortar and not the correct type of gun. We did get this good information in that Dougie's on the way, and we're also showing some of the geography, and obviously it's really good to have. I'll do like a nice slow camera move, but it's really nice to get this really good sense of the geography here, that there's this kind of path, there's a stream of trucks coming. They're going to come down this path and surrounded by water, so they can only go one at a time. But that's one of the important bits of information I really struggled to get across. So they have to go one at a time. You can see also it looked like some sort of fucking alien world at this stage in the process. I soon switched away from that, but at the time I just wanted it to look kind of like hell on earth. That was the original idea. So you feel the pace of the top one, the previous, is much slower. And this is an interesting development here, I think. So in the dialogue in the top one is we feel that breeze. I noticed it. You know what follows. We're talking about poison gas. In the one below, we actually, and you'll see this on the next version as well. I actually showed that there's a breeze. That there's this the shell that's hanging on the hook is swinging. This shell here is swinging because there's a breeze, and so there's a little bit of show, not tell. These World War II soldiers that are standing in are Mixamo characters. They're just kind of generic. I used the same guy for every soldier that wasn't Dougie or Preedy or one of the heroes, basically. I also didn't really understand when we were dropping off ammo, which I'd read about, but I didn't really know what it looked like. So you can see in the previs, he's carrying actual physical shells that are way too big. And in the end, I kind of narrowed that down to it there being boxes of shells. The character for Dougie is another Mixamo character it's based on, called Brute. I think you can still get him. He's on Mixamo. You can download him from the thing, and I gave him a rugby uniform. The colour scheme on his rugby uniform in the previs is based on Huddersfield, which is where this stadium is. This is actually Fartown in Huddersfield that I based this on, which is kind of still structurally there, but I think it's overgrown and abandoned now. But in the end, I decided to give him a British and Irish Lions uniform, which is one of the uniforms that he wore when he played internationally, and I felt that gave the rugby scenes. Obviously, when I started to add the commentary, the dialogue of his coach saying you're playing for England, you're playing for Great Britain, it adds a bit more drama to it that he's playing for the country and not for the town. A lot of dialogue here, so I just omitted basically because there's so much of this, and you can feel how much it drags. And bear in mind that the previous cut here is actually 2 minutes shorter than the finished film. So one of the things that I really developed during this was the pace of the film. Everything goes along at a much better clip. These are awful shots. I hate those two shots. Always wanted to have the truck blow apart on this bit, but I can never get there. I didn't have the knowledge to destroy it, so it just has to kind of get engulfed in light, really. I did like this shot in the previous here where it kind of fades out on the underwater shot, but I needed to do a bit more storytelling to get there for the finished one. So these are the photographs here. This really is Dougie. We didn't use these in the end for the film because I wasn't sure about getting the clearance. We wanted to put the film in some festivals. I needed to be sure that I could have clearance for them, so I just recreated them using my characters, so that I would definitely have clearance for them. It wouldn't result in any legal problems later on. I don't think there'd be any issue with them being on YouTube. Okay, so it was the first cut of the film as previs. You see how rudimentary it was, and also included in there is the 1917 tracks from the film. There's a poster of it right there. I worked on 1917. I was a big fan of it, and I really like the soundtrack. The soundtrack was the temp score then, and I gave that to Mike Payne, my composer, once I'd finished and locked the edit. I gave it to him as reference. So what we're about to see next is another significant cut of previs. So it's not so similar to the film that it's the final cut. I don't think there's much point in showing you the final cut because it's basically the film. The process is I locked the cut and then I just started working on each shot individually and polishing them up. So this is getting close to the final cut, but this is the version that's still got his wife in the opening section. So this is from the end of August 2020. And it was this version of the film that sat on my hard drive then for the next 18 months. Then the process was, once I knew I was going to finish it, I because I saw it with fresh eyes then in 2022, I made some changes to the previs, which you'll see here. I decided to leave the character of his wife out of it because I would have to build another character. This one I didn't think was good enough. It would also meant another voice actor, and I just thought the new version I had in my head works better. So I quickly did a new previs edit, locked it, then started upgrading all the assets and iteratively changing things out, finishing the animation, getting the voice actors in, all that good stuff. So this is where I parked the film in late August 2020. Sort of 3 months after I started it, and there it sat for another kind of 18 months while I waited for Epic Games to tell me I wasn't getting a Mega Grant. I'm a big fan of this opening shot, and I was glad I kept it. That previous shot, I'm not a fan of. This one's nice. You'll see I'm using them in a different order here, and I've had to omit a couple. This was my kind of very rough version of Fartown that I put together. Basically, the story point here is getting to this poster. This poster was real, as I discussed in the last video. Really liked that match cut from the previs. This is the opening shot, as I mentioned in the other video, how it developed. Obviously, in the final version, I added rain. I briefly mentioned the color scheme on the last one, how it evolved, but you'll notice that this has become a claret and gold, which is the colors of Huddersfield, as I mentioned on the last version here, which was his the colour scheme of his rugby uniform. So I tried to get a claret and gold look to the entire world now at this stage, and it works really well. There's some much nicer World War One uniforms available on various 3D marketplaces now than there was then. So I made use of this one, which I bought and then applied to the various characters. I think Preda's uniform is actually. I think I made that out of Mixamo Fuse objects. Same with this guy. Interestingly enough, the Battery Commander is a he was going to be Commissioner Gordon in a Batman film I wanted to make, and that's how I made him. I made him with Mixamo Fuse in 2013. When Mixamo Fuse stopped working when I was making this film in around September, maybe August 2020, I had to go and get characters from my kind of backup library that I'd made over the years because I needed them to have the ability to talk. And that's actually someone who's going to be Andy Serkis. I made a film where I did this kind of spoof version of Andy Serkis. And so the guy there that talks like with the Scottish accent, that was he was going to be Andy Serkis in this spoof I was making about mocap actors, which is ironic really because it's got loads of mocap in it. Anyway, that movie didn't go anywhere. Still got these big shells in this version. I figured out how to do volumetric lighting by this point. Didn't really need to have that there quite so much, but you know, it's a nice little feature when you're still figuring out how to use Unreal. This section changed very little from the version that I first put together. Really, the shots are largely the same, and in fact, a lot of these previous shots stayed in the final version right to the very end. Notice the truck changed orientation there. I was struggling with I'd made up the geography a little bit, and I thought and I noticed it's changed again here. Which is where I don't think anyone ever notices, but I noticed that the truck kind of changes orientation between shots because I wasn't quite sure which way it should go based on where it ends up when he runs back to it. Never mind. I've left this edit a little closer. It's not quite as baggy as the last one, but you can still see how much I'm omitting from the final version and how tight I got this edit of this conversation. And just to add a little bit of adrenaline, a little bit of energy to it. Not much has changed here from the last version, I don't think. I wish I could have got the splash on that looking better, but never mind. Don't like him hanging out the window like that. I'm glad I ended up going with the mirror version. It worked much nicer. So one of the changes as well between here and the final version, you'll know if you watch the film, is that there's a bunch more shots there. It's kind of a denouement, which I think worked really well, but I didn't have them at this point. I still had these guys kind of wading into this water and right, and that's the version that I parked before the film kind of went into hiatus. You can kind of see it coming together there. I think the things are a lot closer. You could see the how much I tightened up the edit for the final with the amount of emissions during that final piece of dialogue. before he ran to the truck. So that's Previs. That's how that's my method for putting a film together. I will get it just very rudimentary to start with. Just get the story told as simple as possible with as little effort as possible, and then just start iterating up and refining, showing it to people, getting some feedback, trying to tell the best story possible as efficiently as possible. I think my mantra is always a simple story well told is the best way to go about this stuff. So thank you for watching. That is more insight into my film Prassenberg Ridge, which I made in Unreal Engine. Any questions? You know where to fire them, and I will see you on the next one.